Hi, I'm Rowena. My husband and my own sister stole over $200,000 from me. They built a startup off my code, my money, and then cut me out like I never existed. But I didn't scream. I showed up at their launch party with a lawyer and let the truth do the talking. Ever felt like your silence was used against you? That the people closest to you smiled while stealing everything? Where are you watching this from? And have you ever been betrayed by someone you called family? Drop a comment. I want to hear your story. The silence between us wasn't new. It had been building, quiet, brittle, just like the way Travis stirred his coffee while I spoke. I haven't heard from Marcy in a while, I said, pretending it was casual, pretending it didn't sting. He didn't look up. She's probably busy. We all are. Then he shifted effortlessly, like a magician redirecting the crowd. Shauna's been tightening the visual branding for WCS. She's got a real eye for that stuff. Of course she does. The clink of his spoon in ceramic sounded louder than it should have. My wine sat untouched. The roast I made was drying on our plates, but I didn't care anymore. Not tonight. Not with that casual dismissal echoing louder than anything else in the room. Good for her, I said. He looked at me then, just briefly, and smiled. The kind of smile that said nothing had been heard. Or worse, nothing had been taken seriously. That night, I stared at my phone longer than usual. No messages, no missed calls, just the faint memory of Marcy's voice from 3 months ago. I'm still with you, even when I'm quiet. But then she wasn't. 6 months ago, in the shared workspace Shauna and I occasionally used, I remember suggesting, I think Marcy should help us handle the early legal structuring. She knows the space. She's discreet. Shauna had smiled. Bright, polished, strategic. Of course, I'll loop her in. She never did. 2 weeks later, I found a message Marcy had forwarded, gently worded, clearly Shauna's voice. To keep the optics clean, we've decided to centralize representation. Nothing personal. We appreciate your support. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, backspaced. I never sent anything. I didn't want to seem dramatic, emotional, the kind of founder that makes a mess when things don't go her way. But tonight, staring at that unread chat window, I realized silence was its own kind of violence. The next morning, I opened my inbox and found a secured PDF. No subject, no message, just one attachment and a sender I hadn't seen in months. Marcy Talbot. Inside was the original WCS formation agreement, annotated by hand. Marcy's handwriting scrawled across the bottom corner. Clause 4.2, IP rights remain with the original creator, unless explicitly signed over. You never signed anything. And then typed just beneath. I stayed silent too long. Not anymore. My eyes scanned to the bottom. My name, my signature, inked and time-stamped. Not forged, not transferred. Mine. My breath caught. Not from surprise, but something sharper. Relief with an edge. That evening, as I sat in bed with the file open, Travis passed by. He paused just long enough to glance at the screen. Old files again? I didn't blink. Old truths. He kept walking, but his grip on the whiskey glass tightened. I closed the laptop, slowly, deliberately, and let the screen go dark. For the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt armed. The toast was cold, untouched. Travis sat across from me in his blue Oxford shirt, sleeves rolled, eyes on his tablet. His fork hovered mid-air. I was thinking, he said, casual like he was offering me a refill. It might make sense to combine our finances. Cleaner for tax season, more streamlined for investors. WCS is scaling fast. He slid a folder across the table. Just a draft. Nothing binding yet. I didn't touch it. You want me to sign this? It's more of a formality, he said, sipping his coffee. We already share everything anyway, right? My silence wasn't agreement. It was assessment, the kind that calculates the space between what's being said and what's really meant. I flipped open the folder, pages filled with jargon. Buried in it, a clause about shared asset management, vague enough to cover everything, specific enough to override me. His name, of course, listed first. Don't overthink it, he added. It's just smart business. I smiled, but it didn't touch my eyes. You've always been good at smart business. That night, I waited until the house quieted. He had fallen asleep watching reruns of some police drama, remote slipping from his hand. I padded into the office and opened my laptop. I pulled up our joint account. The numbers didn't lie. A transfer from my personal savings 2 weeks ago, $12,500. A second one, $8,000. My name, my signature. Except I hadn't signed anything. My fingers hovered over the mousepad. I clicked into the transaction history. The documents loaded slowly, like they knew I needed time to brace. There it was. A scanned approval form. My name digitally printed in the exact font I always used. It looked like me, but it wasn't mine. I printed the page, watching it slide out like an accusation. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake from fear. They trembled from clarity. The next morning, I walked into the bank with every ounce of calm I didn't feel. The associate behind the glass wore a name tag that said, Jordan. He was young, polite, and clearly underpaid for what I was about to ask. I need to verify the origin of 2 transactions and confirm access logs, I said. He nodded, tapped keys. These were authenticated via fingerprint login and verified digital ID, from a device registered to your husband's name. He looked up, slightly hesitant. Would you like to file an inquiry? No, I said. Just print it. He handed over the log. I thanked him and walked out into the morning sun. He hadn't just dipped into my savings. He was erasing me, on paper. Back home, I opened my encrypted drive. A folder labeled ghostlock_beta1 blinked to life. I clicked on the terms I drafted months ago. My eyes found the clause. Independent IP shall remain sole property of creator unless otherwise transferred with explicit written consent. He never got that consent. I leaned back in my chair. The sun traced lazy lines across the hardwood. The city outside moved unaware. He doesn't know what I remember, but I remember everything. The message came just after midnight. No greeting, just a link. I clicked before I could think too hard. It led to a podcast, one that had been trending in the tech community for days, apparently. The episode title hit me first. Built Alone, One Woman's Journey in AI Privacy. I already knew. Shauna's voice floated through my speakers, polished, warm, practiced. I remember sketching this idea on a napkin during a night of wine and whiteboards. I thought, what if privacy wasn't just passive? What if it could learn you? I stopped breathing. That was mine, word for word. A line I said to Travis, not even in a pitch. Just once, late at night, when the idea still felt fragile and I wasn't ready to share it. I remembered how he smiled and said, now that's a thought that sticks. And now it stuck, but to her. The host called her visionary, called Ghostlock her brainchild. I whispered to no one. That was my voice. 2 years ago, I stood in my kitchen, sleeves rolled up, a Sharpie in one hand, and a glass of Malbec in the other. Shauna had been sitting cross-legged on a bar stool, half listening. I was explaining the adaptive firewall logic, how the code would evolve with the user instead of against them. She giggled halfway through and said, "You lost me at predictive heuristic." I laughed then. I didn't now. Because now, those same terms had become the heartbeat of her story. I didn't sleep. I emailed Leland before the sun came up. We met at a co-working hub the next morning. I barely sat down before he said, "I heard the episode. I was waiting for your call." I played the segment again. He frowned. Then he opened an old server folder, one we hadn't touched since the early brainstorming days. Inside was raw footage from an internal team demo. He scrubbed through until we landed on Shauna. Her face, lit by a ring light. Her eyes not on the camera, but on someone behind it. A voice whispered, "Now say it again, but slower this time." She nodded, repeated the line. My line, the same one that started the podcast. Leland looked at me. "You weren't erased. You were edited out." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I dragged the video to my external drive. Later that night, back in my apartment, I watched the podcast and the raw file side by side. One felt like a commercial, the other like a crime. I opened my private devlog and typed a single line. "They rewrote me. I'll write them out." Then I created a new folder. Evidence Phase 1. Leland didn't say anything right away. He just slid the laptop toward me and pointed at the screen. "What am I looking at?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He tapped a line of code near the bottom of the terminal. This module doesn't belong. It's pulling telemetry data and routing it to a masked endpoint. I leaned closer. User behavior? Keystrokes, locations, session length, even camera pings if permissions are toggled wrong. Someone built this intentionally. This isn't debug code. I felt a wave rise in my stomach, not panic, disgust. They're spying on users? No. Leland looked up. They're selling access. I stared at the screen, at the lines I didn't write but could have been blamed for. My initials were still buried in the early builds. They'd left me in the structure, even while cutting me from the face of it. This isn't about me anymore, I said quietly. I left the co-working space without another word. I needed noise, something to drown out the echo. Instead, I found myself parked outside a coffee shop, engine off, heat running low. I thought about the beta users, about Jen's daughter Ava, who used the app last year for her middle school cybersecurity project. She had messaged me, "Your app made me feel safe." And now I couldn't say the same. I pulled out my notebook and scribbled the sentence, "I thought they stole from me. They're stealing from everyone." The thought clung to my chest like smoke. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark. I opened a fresh folder, labeled it Fallout. Inside went logs, screen recordings, timestamps, commits. I opened the FTC's complaint portal. I didn't write my name. I didn't need to. Company, Watts Creative Solutions category, unauthorized data collection. I attached everything, checked the encryption one more time, then I clicked Submit. The moment it was gone, I deleted the upload log, but not the folder. That stayed. A witness. I stood to close the laptop when a sharp ping echoed from the living room. I crossed the space and saw the alert blinking. Unknown device access. IP, Texas. Travis's old laptop. A single message popped up in a shared folder I hadn't touched in months. "You've been digging." I stared at it. Not fear, just confirmation. I whispered, "If he thinks he's watching, he's not ready for what I'll show him next." The password hint was a date. I typed in my birthday. I hesitated, hoping I was wrong, then pressed enter. The Dropbox unlocked. Inside were contracts, PDFs, prototypes I never approved. One had my signature at the bottom. Perfect, except for one thing. I didn't sign it. "He remembered my birthday," I muttered, but only to use it against me. I scrolled through a folder named Media Deck. Inside, a presentation for investors. Clean design, sharp fonts, a photo, my wedding photo, except I wasn't in it. It was the same backdrop, same bouquet, same soft light, but the bride was gone. Shauna stood in my place, smiling like it had always been her. The slide beneath it read, "Women who build alone." I closed my eyes. 16 years ago, I stood under a cypress tree wearing that dress, thinking nothing would ever unravel us. And now, here I was, watching myself be deleted from my own life in high resolution. I whispered. I built with everything I had. At 2 a.m., I sat at the kitchen table and opened a new email draft. To Travis Delaney, CC, legal at WCS BCC, Marcy Talbot, Leland Corbin. Subject, ownership notice. Body, I'm aware of documents bearing my name. I retain all original code bases and contractual ownership of GhostLog's core infrastructure. This message serves as formal notice of my retained legal rights. Kindly act accordingly. I sent it, logged out, then revoked my Dropbox access. Let them feel that digital door slam. At sunrise, I stood in the bathroom staring into the mirror. The face looking back was mine, but older. More still. Behind me, my phone buzzed once. Voicemail, Travis. His voice came through, thin and wary. "Hey, I think we should talk. Can we just talk?" I didn't answer. I'd been quiet long enough for them to think I was invisible. But ghosts leave traces. The ballroom was packed with familiar strangers. Polished smiles, ironed shirts, false camaraderie. I stood in the back, behind a row of fake ferns, listening to Shauna take the mic. "We built this from the ground up," she said, eyes shining under LED lights. "Some of us did it loudly, others quietly, and that's okay. Not everyone needs to be center stage. Some people belong in the background." She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. The team chuckled, not knowing where to place their eyes. Travis smirked at the floor. I didn't flinch, not because I wasn't hurt, but because I needed to remember every word. That night, my laptop lit up with a single new email. No subject, just one line. Dissolve your LLC quietly, you've been warned. No name, but the IP told me enough. Internal server, WCS. I forwarded it to Marcy with 3 words. Interesting timing, huh? She replied instantly. Cowards always threaten before they fall. I stared at the cursor blinking in my journal app before typing. They want quiet, I'll give them silence, with evidence. I printed the ghost lock contracts, all of them, backed up every server, every commit, every diagram, every version history tied to my name. Then I opened a new slide deck. Ghost lock branding, white background, no frills. First slide, origin. Below it, I wrote, when a woman is erased, she writes herself back in. I didn't publish it, not yet. At midnight, I met Marcy and Leland at a bar off East 6th. We sat outside. It was too cold for conversation, but we had plenty to say. I handed over my phone. Marcy read the email first. That's not a warning, she said. That's fear. Leland leaned forward. We move now? I shook my head. Next week they launch. That's when I show up. Let them think the silence is submission. They've never heard me speak. I arrived late on purpose. The rooftop ballroom buzzed with money and ego. Glasses clinked, teeth flashed, and somewhere in the background a jazz cover of a pop song tried too hard. I stood in the doorway long enough for them to notice. Travis looked up first. His smile froze halfway. Shauna's hand, holding a champagne flute, hesitated mid-gesture. I didn't smile. I walked in, calm, dressed in black. My attorney, Carla, trailed behind me, her bag in one hand, a slim white folder in the other. Deshawn caught my eye and nodded. Just once. Enough. Shauna cleared her throat and returned to her speech. Building a company from nothing takes guts, vision, and trust. It takes knowing who you are and who to leave behind. Someone clapped. Travis didn't look at me again. I waited until she said, and now, let's raise a glass to the people who showed up when it counted. I stepped forward. I did, I said, loud enough to stop the music. I showed up, just not in the version of the story you told. People turned. Someone whispered my name. Deshawn leaned toward the host and said something. A mic was passed. I took it. You know me as Travis's wife, maybe the quiet one in the back. But if you've ever opened the app you're all celebrating tonight, you've used something I built. Gasps? No, not yet. But the air changed. I reached into Carla's folder and pulled out a USB. Let's see the real launch presentation. The screen flickered. New slides. Ghost Lock origin presentation. On screen, side-by-side screenshots of the codebase. Commits with my name, dates, timestamps. Then the video. Shauna, reading from a script off camera, a voice feeding her lines. She blinked, repeated them, word for word. People started shifting in their seats. Someone in the back started recording on their phone. I funded this, I said. I coded this. I was erased, not anymore. A scroll of bank transactions appeared. Money moved from my personal account. Dates matched Travis's angel investment stories. Shauna stepped forward. This is taken out of context. Deshawn raised a hand. Let her finish. Travis laughed, but it cracked midway. Rowena, this is a misinterpretation. You're twisting things. I turned to him. Then sue me for defamation. I'd love to see discovery. Shauna's glass shattered on the floor. I handed the mic back, nodded once, and walked out. Deshawn followed. You want to stay for the fallout? No, I said. But I'll be watching every fire they set trying to put themselves out. Carla handed a sealed envelope to the event photographer. Please send us the originals of those shots. Thank you. I turned one last time toward the glittering chaos behind us. They framed the night for themselves. I reframed it in one click. Deshawn didn't yell. He didn't need to. He slid the folder onto the center of the conference table, each page neatly tabbed, every screenshot visible even from across the room. On top, a copy of the Ghost Lock origin presentation. Below that, transaction records, code commits, and the raw footage. Your silence wasn't protection, he said, looking at Shauna. It was deception. Travis blinked. We never... Look, this is being weaponized. She's emotional. This isn't a courtroom. Deshawn's face didn't move. Then file a lawsuit, but our firm won't be part of it. The board sat in a circle of frozen silence. Shauna opened her mouth, then closed it. Her fingers gripped her tablet like a lifeline. An ethics investigation was underway. Deshawn's legal team had already alerted the necessary regulatory bodies. Funding was gone. So was the protection. They built their house on my silence, and I wasn't quiet anymore. Later that afternoon, at Ghostlock HQ, I received a DM. The name was unfamiliar. Iris Monroe. The message was short. They did it to me too. We spoke that night. Iris had co-founded an AI wellness startup in 2019. Shauna joined as a branding consultant during their accelerator pitch cycle. 2 months in, Iris was asked to step aside for clarity. Her name was removed from the pitch deck. Iris had kept everything. She sent me screenshots, emails, Slack messages where Shauna rehearsed lines she'd lifted directly from Iris's original build notes. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. But the internet did. Hash pattern off erasure started trending the next morning. Former interns, collaborators, women from smaller projects that never reached funding rounds. I read each post. I liked everyone. At the downtown legal office, Marcy slid her pen across the Ghostlock contract summary. "You're airtight," she said, "and they're hemorrhaging." Then she passed me a printed email. Shauna Delaney requests to enter private settlement discussion. I stared at it. No subject line. Just a line of text below her name. "Let's handle this discreetly." I handed it back. "We don't settle," I said. "We correct." That evening I stood on my balcony. The sun sank behind the skyline, casting the city in soft gold. My phone buzzed. "Deshawn, let's talk about rebuilding. Without ghosts." Another notification, a keynote invitation to the Women in Tech Summit. I didn't answer either. I just smiled. They tried to delete my name. Now it's on every list they were never invited to. The office was quiet except for the soft hum of the server rack. Leland sat with his feet up, reviewing a clean commit. Marcy stood near the window, sipping bad coffee, smiling to herself like she already knew what I was about to say. "Offer signed," I said, placing the final packet on the desk. "Another engineer?" Marcy asked. "Intern," I corrected. "But give her 3 months and she'll rewrite the back end better than I ever could." Leland didn't look up. He just updated the codebase title. Ghostlock _2.0_row. There was no applause, no speech, just quiet movement. Progress. I grabbed the marker and wrote across the whiteboard. "No one gets deleted here." By the time I got back to my apartment, Travis had finally sent over the final paperwork, his remaining stake in WCS, signed away. No email body, just the attachment. I filed it into a folder labeled Done. Shauna, meanwhile, had posted one final story to her feed that morning, a photo of a sunrise. The caption read, "We tried." And then she vanished. No profile, no trace. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. There was one last thing. A folder on my desktop, WCS_pitch_day1. I opened it, stared at the original draft, the lies we were going to tell before they decided I didn't belong. Then I deleted it. For good. That night, I got an email from a familiar address. "Rowena, we'd be honored if you'd keynote our opening panel at the Women in Tech Summit this spring." I stared at the message for a long time. My finger hovered over the reply button. Marcy walked into the kitchen, set down a mug beside me. "You've been quiet long enough," she said. "Now they're asking you to speak." I hit reply, typed one word. "Yes." Later, I stood on my balcony, letting the cool air slip under my sleeves. The city was alive in the distance. I didn't scroll, didn't refresh. A new notification pinged. I didn't open it. I didn't win. But I'm not losing anymore. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is refuse to stay quiet. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the truth. And in the end, that was enough. If you've ever been erased, underestimated, or told your place was in the background, let me tell you, your silence is not submission. You can rebuild, you can reclaim, and you can rewrite the ending they tried to assign you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have walked into that room, or walked away and rebuilt from nothing? Let's talk in the comments. If this story hit something in your heart, drop a 1, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, that's okay too. Tell me why. I'm here to listen. And hey, if you want to hear more stories like this, real, raw, and powerful, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next.